In life, we are painters of our own universe. We are white walls who start blank with the intentions of adding color of the deepest and most valued moments we experience. It is a temporary forever we hold up because someday and one day we will fall. What we do in our lives is what we make of it, and who we are is what will live on forever. My mother got married when I was in the 6th grade, and I had the privilege to meet 2 amazing people who I called my grandparents. From that day on, they became inspiring. Moments with them seemed to capture pictures that would later be stored in my heart. I find myself flipping through some memories of my grandparents in my head, constantly thinking of the value they took up. My heart was consumed of them. Mike and Judy were 2 of the most kind and loving souls I've ever come across. Their house was always filled with so much laughter, kindness, and lots of homemade cookies. Their visits to their house was always something I looked forward to. Maybe a dip in the hot tub or just to talk on the couch was how my days with them would go. I can remember all the times they supported me at one of my sports events. On the sidelines, screaming my name, they were fans of me and I was big fans of them. I knew their love for their family was real and kept them going. Their presence would light up with such intensity that it brought warmth to the hearts of others. Their faith was almost as strong as the love they had for one another. I remember Christmas time the clearest because my grandma Judy would wear her very own handmade sweaters. They were special, just like her. Mike would give out Christmas letters with lots of money. The real worth of the card was the laugh it brought, followed by the glance he'd give you once he looked up. It was an irreplaceable bond that formed so strong that I knew it would be hard to let go of. His sickness started to slow my grandma down at first, and all of a sudden her laughs were shorter and she kept insisting it was nothing, that it'll pass. I trusted her word that day she came over to my house to join us for breakfast. Shortly after, my prayers consisted of her name 4 or 5 times, and I closed my eyes a little harder so that maybe it would sink in a little more. She was getting weaker, but my faith was getting stronger. My prayers seemed like they were getting silenced, but my cry for help got louder. I put my everything in God to make her better, so she could get up and spread smiles as fast as hers would. I knew what I was facing when she was called into the hospital. I rushed to her side in my car, going 55 in a 35. As much as I loved to think that slowing down and acting like it was nothing would strengthen my hope that she was fine, my foot had a mind of its own. But now that I think of it, I wish I pressed my foot a little harder to hit 60 miles per hour because my timing couldn't have been more off. I ran from the parking lot into the revolving doors and halted. I watched the doctor's lips move with his hands folded in front, and my family's eyes stayed shut until their faces dropped. I knew what had happened before I even heard what the doctor had to say. My grandpa screamed with all his might, but these white walls, they seemed to silence him. Hospitals are enclosed with white walls and inhabit all the hopes and dreams of ever being the same again. Every room, someone is saying their last goodbye or is hoping to see a life outside the walls that trap their sunshine. Some know no life outside the busy halls and beeping machines. Some have no strength left to give. Some are praying to die. My grandma said to my dad, if they give me the opportunity to live, keep me alive. They pumped her chest, even with the chance of breaking her bones, but the only thing that would break was her heart, and she was gone. She is now sanctioned in the white walls of all her broken dreams and lost hope. The day was long, and the pain only grew deeper. Her heart was so warm, but her hands lay there so cold. The words coming out of the doctor's mouth were piercing like the cold wind that blew that day. We rushed to her side, even though her eyes were already closed. I got the chance to look around at the room, at all the people she left behind to cry at her bedside. All I can feel is the 4 white walls staring back at us, but all of a sudden it gave me a lifting feeling. I looked around, and I saw her husband laid on her chest and spoke. He cried out, I don't want to be alone. Her heart was broken, and she was gone. His last thing she said to me rung in my head a billion times. I love you, sweetie, see you soon. Her husband had this look in his eyes that made you understand the damage of the loss of his best friend caused. We were all at his side and watched others say sorry like it would patch up all the broken pieces that were falling in his chest. Pain was the only thing that left he was facing for months before he was slowly giving up. This isn't real. This is what I kept telling myself over and over, watching him slowly grow weak. Weeks later, he laid in the emergency room with machines to help him breathe. His son and my mother laid at his side day in and day out. I could remember my single trip to the hospital, but by then he wasn't responsive. My dad laid over him, arms wrapped around him like the tubes wrapped around my grandpa, except the arms of my dad begged for his strength to hold him back, while my grandpa begged for the tubes to keep him alive. My dad stayed by his bedside, cracking old jokes to get a smile out of him. I watched him grow desperate. The white walls once again seemed to start closing, and the clock on the wall ticked slower like the heartbeat of my grandpa. I left the room, again to only feel trapped in a different room, same place, but this time with the thought of my grandma to paint my sorrows on these white walls. I went home that night and cried myself to sleep. My dreams escaped me from opening my eyes to a nightmare. The few mornings I woke up, my heart felt so heavy I couldn't even pick myself out of bed. I think I already knew what was going to happen before. I've never been so selfish and stubborn before. I constantly told myself that God wasn't going to take my grandpa away, too. I was outside on a Friday night underneath the star-filled sky. It was cold and I couldn't feel my hands. I felt peace in the silence and the enormous sky that looked down upon me. I couldn't go home. The pain only grew stronger. Being there, the stars made me feel safe. I hope they made my grandpa feel safe too. My phone rang, the ring shook my heart, and then all at once, time slowed down. My mother explained to me that my grandpa would be joining his wife in heaven. Weeks later, after the loss of both my grandparents, it felt out of place to be burying both of them in the same day. A matter of 4 months is all it took to lose two of the greatest grandparents. As we walked away from the burial site that day, my mom grabbed my shoulder and said, "I guess what they say is true." She followed by looking at me and saying, a man dies of a broken heart when he loses his wife. So maybe it wasn't his sickness that took him. Maybe his heart was already slowly dying. I finally had the chance to slow down and process everything bad that just happened in the last couple of months. My face was down, my legs were weak but standing, and the silence seemed to halt the thoughts that were only painful. It was clear to me that the lifting feeling I had inside the room the day my grandma died, it was something more. I believe that even that the tiniest things bring out the biggest meaning, and they're to teach you a message about yourself. The message of being in 2 hospitals was the white walls that were in them. The message was clear. Is that we are all the same. We all start somewhere and end up in the same place. I hate to say that the ones you love now can't stay forever in those upcoming moments, but rather in the mind of memory they remain. I look at everyone as a white wall blank and standing tall. We paint the walls with all our hopes, sorrows, love, hate, and every emotion we hold. Eventually we will fall. We will be covered in everything we've been through, and what sets us free is being wiped clean to start a new beginning. The hospital isn't enclosed with broken dreams and lost hope. It's the start of another forever. My grandma and grandpa were the white walls in the hospital the day they died. Blank and empty, they were set free of the pain and sorrows of ever suffering. They were wiped clean. We should all look deep inside ourselves and understand that what we do now is a part of forever we paint. And even though it seems like the point of my story was to cherish the time I had with the ones you love, it's rather struck me as finding a sense of satisfaction within the tragic moment. When I said they became inspiring, I meant the fact that they give me so much meaning in something so simple as the walls in a hospital. I was okay when I realized my grandparents are somewhere safe and free. So now that I look at the ones in the white walls of a hospital now, they are not trapped. Just like my grandparents, they will eventually be set free.